read more from The Hunt itself, this one might be for my more nerdy people. It goes into how structural dissociation is when your personality splits, which a lot of people might think of as like DID, and it can include that. But also even like simple PTSD also has some degree of structural dissociation. And this kind of explains how there are these things called action systems in all personalities and how those impact the way that we split or how or why we split. The various types of action systems were mentioned briefly in the introduction and include two major categories: approach to the rewards and responsibilities of daily life, and avoidance and escape from physical threat. We have called them action systems because they help us meet adaptive challenges through mental and behavioral action. In mentally healthy adults, action systems of daily life and defense are integrated. For example, most people live daily life while also being aware of potential dangers. They drive defensively, avoid walking alone at night, and seek shelter during a major storm. Action systems define, to a large degree, what we find attractive or aversive, and then generate tendencies to approach or avoid accordingly. Each action system allows us to filter stimuli in or out according to the relevant biosocial goals of that action system. They direct us to learn what is relevant for adaptation, and in turn, these systems are modified by that learning. For example, the defense action system and related feelings of fear help us to know that there is danger and prompt us to act in our own defense. The combination of sexual and attachment systems help us to move towards both attachment and reproduction, both of which provide meaning, support, and pleasure in our lives and are ultimately necessary for the survival of our species. Action systems that concern forms of social engagement, such as attachment, caretaking, and reproduction, involve cross-conscious emotions of shame, guilt, and embarrassment, which prompt us to withdraw from others, preventing potential rejection or criticism. However, they also motivate us to conform to social norms to ensure that we are an accepted part of the group. The exploration system activates our curiosity to learn more about our world, and in the process, we become more adept at managing our environment, which helps us survive more effectively. The energy regulation system prompts us to respond to experiences of fatigue and hunger, necessary actions to survive and maintain homeostasis. Individuals must meet a range of biosocial goals in daily life, such as taking care of children, socializing, competing with others, playing with friends, exploring their outer and inner world. To meet these complex goals, individuals must integrate action systems, which can be a daunting task because combining action systems is more challenging than engaging in a single one. Indeed, many common psychological conflicts involve difficulty in balancing such interests. For example, working all the time is less complex than balancing work, relationships, and recreation, but being able to balance all of those activities is more adaptive and healthy. The balance of action systems requires higher mental efficiency than engaging in a single one. When an individual has structural dissociation, a dissociative part of the personality will be directed by the particular goals of the action system that motivate that part, and will inhibit or avoid other goals related to action systems that are dissociated in other parts of the personality. For example, one dissociative part focuses on staying safe and thus tends to avoid people in social situations and does not speak up. Another part of the same person finds people stimulating and interesting, feels safe with them, and wants to spend time with friends. If dissociative parts are fixated in particular action systems or subsystems, they may be unable to accurately perceive and cope with their situation because their perceptions are colored by the goals, and their field of consciousness will be restricted to stimuli relevant to that particular system. For example, as ANP, Miriam was constantly terrified of losing her child and was overprotective in the extreme. When she went to the mall with her son, she could not focus on what she needed to buy, but only on watching him. She perceived every approaching stranger as a threat and insisted on holding her son's hand tightly, even though he was 9 years old and terribly embarrassed by his mother's behavior. Her mind was filled with the urgent need to protect her child at all costs and nothing else. It should be noted that most action tendencies are not specific to a given action system or its components, but it can be modified and plugged in to achieve a variety of goals. For example, different action systems can promote running to achieve a goal. An individual can run from threat and towards a safe place, which would be an active defense, or they could run in a race towards the finish line as a form of play, or they can run towards a loved one, an active attachment. In the same way, sexual behavior may achieve different goals. Individuals may engage in sex for recreation, pleasure, procreation, and healthy intimacy. In some situations, sex can be used as protection from a threat, such as submitting to rape to save one's life, or as a barter, such as exchanging sex for basic needs such as food, shelter, or nurturing. Sex can also be used as a substitute action tendency to avoid feelings or traumatic memories. In dissociative individuals, this means the same action tendency may involve discrepant goals. While ANP may be involved in running as a sport, EP has only experienced running as flight from danger. While ANP experiences sex as intimate and pleasurable, EP experiences it as coercive and frightening. The risk then is that the action of the ANP, whether it's running or sex, may reactivate EP's traumatic memories and related actions, such as running away from a threat or having to submit to sex in order to not be beaten, which may be quite maladaptive in the present. In trauma-related structural dissociation of the personality, the coordination and cohesion of action systems appears to be disrupted. Normally, action systems are neither completely open nor closed to each other, as this would yield chaos or complete rigidity, respectively. They need to function interdependently with each other, with one being more dominant than others at a given time. They thus involve boundaries which, as stimulus filters and degrees of reciprocal inhibition, for example, attachment and defense, inhibit each other. But in structural dissociation, these boundaries become too rigid and closed between various action systems. Each dissociative part of the personality thus will be limited to a great degree by the constellation of action systems or subsystems by which it is mediated. Thus, a part mediated primarily by defense has great difficulty engaging in close connection with another person, such as the social engagement action system, because those goals are incompatible with those of defense. And such a dissociative part will tend to perceive far too many experiences as threatening because the defense system filters stimuli according to perceived threat and not potential reward. In primary structural dissociation, which is like simple PTSD, not CPTSD or more severe trauma disorders, division of the personality seems to most often occur between the two major categories of action systems, those of daily life and of defense. In some cases of more complex forms of dissociation related to chronic childhood traumatization, there are reasons for these two types of action systems to become mixed in maladaptive ways in various parts of the personality. Attachment is central to the context in which all other action systems mature. If attachment is disrupted early in life, it may lead to maladaptive functioning in various areas of life because at the most basic action systems do not function well. Attachment relationships assist individuals in regulating their emotions and physiology, providing basic internal and relational stability. Adaptive functioning in daily life also requires awareness of potential physical threat. But on a much more complex level, we must also deal with social and relational threats in daily life and with internal threats to the integrity of our sense of self. ANP engages in these kinds of defenses, which may become more pronounced and chronic following traumatization, is a subcategory of social defenses. We are vulnerable to abandonment, aloneness, and rejection in social and relational contexts. These represent particularly unbearable threats to those who have endured chronic childhood abuse and thus have not experienced many secure attachments and safe social situations. Such chronic threats lead to phobias related to attachment and other forms of social engagement, which manifest in particular kinds of defense within the context of social engagement action systems. When a significant other or social group is rejecting, hostile, or unpredictably absent, actions in the traumatized individual are set in motion to protect him or her from a sense of abandonment or rejection. The action systems of daily life, hence ANPs, not only involve approach to attractive stimuli, but include impression management and other forms of social defense that have as a goal the protection of one's attachment and social status. Subcategory interoceptive defense. This is defense against intrapsychic threats, which is what we call introceptive defense. These defenses are manifestations of the phobia of mental actions. As noted in the introduction, they are known as psychological defense mechanisms, and in the psychodynamic literature, such as splitting, narcissism, and projection. They not only protect against one's own intolerable emotions, thoughts, and fantasies, but also serve as social defenses against attachment disruptions and perceived loss of social status. Like social defenses, interoceptive defense may have evolved from basic physical defenses such as flight. Examples listed include denial, splitting, suppression, and motivated forgetting, and total submission, with examples being retraction and lowering of consciousness. These kinds of mental actions maintain or elaborate structural dissociation. In sum, ANPs are primarily mediated by some constellation of action systems of daily life, and in this context they also engage in social and intrapsychic defense. These latter systems can be seen as evolutionarily more advanced forms of the more basic physical defense action system.